Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers. This is Jerry Diamond with How to Get Out of Babylon. And I'm just going to talk for a while. Kind of a combination, lights out, discussing the story, and then I want to apply it to what is happening right here right here on this farm and in this area, the Ozark Plateau. So what we're seeing in the story is the importance of community. And we're seeing the importance of having good people in that community. Okay? And we're seeing the importance of having a lot of good people in the community. Okay? So that is something that everyone needs to consider. Okay? And it's something that I have seen, known. Don't ask me why. I've known that from the start, that we need to have a large enough group of people in a given area that they can pull together and everybody survive. So that's one thing that is critical. Now, what does a community look like? What is a community? This is something where most people are just totally out to lunch on. I mean, just clueless. People that are building communities are clueless. A community is not something that you build on, let's say, a chunk of land, 100 acres, 200 acres, okay? Let's say 200 acres. Let's say somebody owns 200 acres and they want to build a community. No. I mean, what you can do is you can bring people in, good people, and you can help them. Now, I wish everybody would read my book. It's free to download on lulu.com, Lulu.com. Everybody should be able to remember that, Lulu. Under the pen name Jeremiah Elliott. I didn't know nothing about the internet, and I don't feel like changing the name now. It was my pen name. How to Get Out of Babylon, Eagle's Wings, New Millennium, whatever. There's a bunch of different names. It's the same book. Sorry about that. I just thought, well, somebody put it out there for whoever, finding it under whatever name. But anyway, what I talk about in the book is tithing land, setting aside. Let's say a person has 10 acres, set aside an acre for a family to live on. 1 acre is enough for a family to live on if they have income, if they have some way to make themselves useful, But let's say you upscale that to 100 acres. Well, the next thing I looked at was 200 acres, because I knew friends of ours that have 200 acres. And Scott's said one time, a 200 acres is about enough for a family to subsist on. Now, people go, oh, it doesn't take that much. No, it doesn't. If you're the Dervay family in Sacramento, California, you have 1/5 of an acre and you can grow 20,000 pounds of food. Sure, it can be done. But you need, if you're going to have any animals at all, you got to have some room for them, and you got to have places for equipment. You got to have, firewood, if you got, or something to heat with. So I'm not going to argue the fact. I mean, it's just that was a guy's opinion, and he's probably closer to right than any dumb city person that don't know nothing from nothing. He's lived out in the country all his life. So anyway, well, let's say that he tithed 200 acres, okay? Well, that's 1/10 of 200 acres, 20 acres. So let's say you put a family on 10 acres and another family on 10 acres, so now you have two. Maybe these families weren't as well off as you were. I mean, when they came down and bought their 200 acres, they flew down and they chartered a plane and they looked at about 200 properties in a couple of weeks. Nope, maybe, nope. That one looks pretty good, Then they got in the car and drove around and checked the ones that were possibilities. Anyway, so you have that issue, that possibility. So these other people, they came in and hat in hand. They came up with a shirt on their back, but they have skills, or they came with some equipment, some tools, some know-hows. do construction, farmer, ex-military, something they could contribute. So these two families are helpers, employees, slaves, as it were. So there is that. So there's that, as Richie from Boston would say. I'll try not to digress. So anyway, the point is that that's one way to look at community. Okay, you have a bunch of land and you're going to help somebody get started on it, and they're going to help you. Okay, but generally what you have is the person that owns the land is like the head honcho, and it just ends up being a dictatorial situation. I don't care who it is. It's their land. They're going to run it the way they want it, and it's my way or the highway. That's how it's going to be. You can't get away from it. Tribal, the Pastor Joe Fox talks about is, the idea of tribes. Yeah, he's going to be a tribal leader, no question. He's got 90,000 followers. He probably have a pretty good sized tribe down there. But that's not going to be really community. Now go to the another end of the spectrum and go to Acts 2. Everything, they had everything in common. That sounds good. But again, unless it is completely administered by someone who is not going to lord it over everybody, then that's not going to work either. You can't do that with somebody owning the land and saying all things in common. Because what happens there is, what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. Generally, that's how it works out. So that's not a really a way to look at it. Now, if you had, what you had in Acts, I'll just point this out, is that it says that people out in the country sold their land and laid the money at the apostles' feet. Okay, the influx of believers was near the city. They were coming through the city. There was Passover, et cetera, et cetera. No, Pentecost, it was Pentecost, but they were there for feast day. So there's people from all over the world there. They got saved, and people were added to the church daily, such as should be saved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they needed a way to take care of those people, to feed them, house them, clothe them. And of course, a lot of poor people were getting saved. So the money was from land in the country. Now, this is my take on it. We need to do the opposite. People in the city need to sell their land, quote unquote, their houses, their property in the city, and transfer that out to the country. We need to have the population base out in the country. I can't remember the guy's name. I could probably think of it if I tried really hard and didn't think about it, tried not to think about it. Anyway, there's the idea that, once salt will preserve, we're meant to preserve, but once the carcass, once the body, once the meat is rotted, is putrid, the salt is not needed anymore. It's gone. The body's gone. The carcass is dead. It's too late to salt it. And that's the case, I believe, in the country. The body's dead. This country's dead. The cities are dead. And anybody that stays in the cities is probably going to be dead. What we need to do is just, for a temporary time, preserve the salt and as much of living meat as possible, meaning remnant believers. We need to step back in the cleft of the rock and wait for the indignation of Yahweh to pass by. We need to be thinking about preserving the salt and preserving as much with that salt as possible. Okay, so that's my take on it. So community, basically, this entire country was gridded out in community. Look it up. Every county has townships. The townships are a place that you could walk to from your farm and walk home in a day. The township could send out messengers to the farms outlying and walk home and walk back to town in a day. A county is basically, how far you can ride in a day and back to the center, to the county seat. Or the county seat can send out messengers on horseback and get back in a day. So, marches and ridings, look it up. There's a manual, it should still be online, no problem. The County Restoration Manual was written in Cedar, well, it was written for, not Cedar County, for the Well-Fed Neighbor Alliance. It's basically the Well-Fed Neighbor Alliance manual for restoring your county after the shit hits the fan. Get it, read it, download it. Mostly written by Eric and Kathy Bott. Both two just brilliant people. Eric's like ex-Pentagon type of think tank, whatever. And Kathy's just about the same. So two absolutely wonderful people, wonderful friends. The idea of a township is a community. Ecclesia is a group of people that live close by each other. You don't have to all. You can't all live on the same property. It's just stupid to even think that. If 200 acres realistically is enough for one family, and that's a lot. But if you have equipment and cattle and goats and chickens and everything, and have a bunch of kids, it's not too much. So, we need to just. I'm just saying. I'm not advocating that, but I am advocating. I'll get to what I am really advocating in a minute. So I want to just wrap this part of it, and I'll probably go to another video possibly. But what I want to say is that the idea of a bunch of people coming and living in community, and everything's going to be hunky-dory and lovey-dovey, and it's never going to happen. It'll never happen, period, end of story. Now, given a situation where there's this property and this property and this property, and you all live in that close by, that's doable. That's feasible. Every man should have his own castle. Every man is, technically, in Scripture, a man is prophet, priest, and king of his household. I am the prophet, priest, and king of my house. I'm in King David right now. I'm fleeing from Saul, but I've been living in the cave of Adullam. That's fine. That happens before you go live in a palace. So whatever, or however that's going to work out, I don't know. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that's not a problem to me. It happened to David. Joseph did not have a really fun life, before he was exalted. That's just simple things that happen to people. So that is not the issue, but the issue is living nearby somebody. Townships were, you had the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, the electrician, plumber, whoever, all incorporated. A general store, a miller, a guy that would mill your grain. His name was Miller. You had a carpenter. His name was Carpenter. You had a horseshoer. His name was Horseshoer. No, his name was a, ironmonger or blacksmith. So, and that's what we need. People close enough to build fence, come over, help put a roof on, and we've done that for years. There in Cedar County, I've got people that have followed me there, about 100 people or so, living fairly close to each other. And it's amazing what you can do. I mean, if you need somebody, they're there, So to me, that is what we want to look at, community. Now, someday, the book of Acts may replay, but it's not going to happen. And still, you had private ownership. You had people that had land out in the country, and they sold their land. They laid the money at the apostles' feet for the work that they were doing. Until we have a group of people who are recognized as leaders and who are trustworthy, then that's not going to happen. It can't happen. It won't happen. It ain't going to happen on one person's land. Sorry, not going to happen. And there are scams going on right now as we speak here in the Ozark Plateau. There's communities that make themselves out to be a community. And, homestead and whatnot. And they're not. It's just a total scam from hell, and I'm not talking about anybody that anybody would recognize on this channel, I don't think. Not talking about Pastor Joe or anything. I mean, he's doing some good work there. He's got a bunch of good people gathering around him, and they're fairly close. And that's exactly what I'm recommending. That's what I'm saying. You got the Millennial Man. I don't know how far away they are, but I know they got Fletch, my Ozark Tactical Homestead. Okay. Millennial Man, the Revolting Man, and the Revolting Man's Wife, Revolting Woman, the Revolting Wife, whatever. I love the names there. But, that's what we want to see. That's what you got. That's what you've got to see. That's what you have to have is people living nearby. I think it was one of them, the Millennial Man, I'm pretty sure it was. But anyway, he came over and helped Pastor Joe do something. That's what you want. You want neighbors that are close enough to, hey, can you come? I met a neighbor today, and he said, I'll have your back. I got your back. And I was like, cool. That's what I want to hear. So anyway, so the idea of community, you got to rethink it. It isn't going to be like one building or a big building or barracks. That needs to happen. All these church camps, beautiful, what I call SLS, soft landing spots. We need to have soft landing spots. And I'm not saying that that's not something having one big place is good as a temporary, you got a halfway house. That's what we need. We need halfway houses, soft landing spots, Here's a barracks, that's great, a dormitory, whatever you want to call it. Single women here, single guys here, families over here, single moms over here, and like 4 different buildings. And community center, kitchen, and a lot of church grounds are built like that. They have that capability of taking that in if and when the time comes. I know a church who brought in over 100 families from South Africa to keep them from getting murdered. And I don't know, it's just been almost impossible to get anybody out lately for the last 18 years. So not going to go into that bunny trail. But I almost believe, I thought about this just came to me, that the vision I had that started this ministry, and I'm going to try to tell this without just going to pieces, happened in the dormitory where those South African families stayed. And it struck me that the very room, that it happened in had been occupied by one of those South African families and probably had been bathed in prayer and blood and sweat. And it may be that my vision was a direct answer to the prayers prayed a decade ago, maybe 2 decades ago, by families in that bedroom. And okay, I'm gonna stop thinking about it right now, because if I keep thinking about it, I'll go to pieces. So yeah, wow, it's heavy. I mean, and I have no doubt whatsoever. I've said before that the man E.M. Bounds, who wrote a lot of books on prayer, Power Through Prayer, it is his belief, from having read a lot, and you see coincidence, and you see parallels, and you see, examples and different things, but it is his belief that the worldwide missionary movement of the 1800s, to Burma, Adoniram Judson went to Burma, and C.T. Studd went to Africa, China and Africa, and Hudson Taylor went to China, and Henry Martin went to India, and on and on and on. Robert Murray McCheyne went to Israel. That those men, their calling, the call to their heart, and the vision that they were given, was more due to the prayers of one man than anything else, David Brainerd, 100 years prior to that. So time is irrelevant to the Father, and angels, how long did that angel wait before he could get through to come to Daniel, yeah. So, there's spiritual warfare going on, and David Brainerd warred in the spiritual realm and died because of it. He died at the age of 29. So, so anyway, so my life was affected, definitely by prayer, by that vision, and just revamped totally. I'll never forget one time I came out of a Sunday school, and I had sat for the first time under this woman, Lucy Esch. She had been in London during the bombing during World War II, had a patient in her arms in the hospital, got hit. She held that patient in her arms as they fell through 4 floors of rubble, and was still holding the patient when they hit ground floor. And the patient died, but she was still holding it, and her back was broken multiple places. For the rest of her life, she's had multiple surgeries, but she was Welsh, and she was a spiritual woman, and I went out of I walked out, and I went to the car, and I came walking back, and she said later, you look like you were going to ask me for $1 million. And I said, I was asking you for more than that. And I knew it. I looked at her, and I said, I asked her, would you pray for me? Because I knew. I got to the car and I was like, this woman is a praying woman. She's a woman of prayer. She's a prayer warrior. And yeah, so my life was affected by that, definitely. What a woman. She was in the Bible College of Wales during World War II. Reese Howells Intercessor, to read that book. She was there. And they would pray, and miracles happened right and left as they prayed for things that happened, to affect battles and affect the whole outcome of the war. So, anyway, so community is not what everybody thinks it makes it out to be. We're going to have this big, happy, fuzzy feeling community. You've got to work. You've got to have skills. You got to work. You got to do something. You got to plant. You got to take care of chickens. You need to drill a well. You need to frame a house. You need to build a barn. You need to put fence up, cut trees down. It takes a lot of people, and everybody that starts out thinking they're going to do it all. I've heard my son say, and friend PJ say, and John say, you know what? I figured out I'm not Superman. You can't do it all. You got to have help. You've got to specialize in something, and then do the best you can in other areas. Everybody can have chickens. Everybody could have, a goat or sheep or cow or something, but you can't do it all. You just flat can't do it all. It's just not possible. So now on 200 acres and big kids, a lot of kids, yeah, so you can have it all. And that's what Scott was referring to. Because he had a daughter that ran goats and had about 200 goats. Another daughter that did chickens and did a bang-up job of it. I mean, she would take the chickens to Mountain Home, blah, 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 $2.49 a pound, 7-pound chicken, figure it out, 9-pound chicken. People would say, hey, I only want a 5-pound chicken. Well, good, you slaughter them quicker, throw them in the freezer, less feed. I want 7-pound chickens, okay, 7 pounds, boom, in the freezer. So, and then she'd deliver them. So it was a very, very good business. They paid an extra $1.39 or something for the innards, the gizzard and the liver, heart, gizzard, and neck. Another $1.29 a bird. Well, 100 birds, you do 100 birds at a time. Yeah, figure that adds up pretty quick. Another $120. So anyway, that's it. Just thoughts on community, and then I want to do, and I don't know if I'm going to do it tonight because we've got to start addressing the thing of how to do it right. Okay, and that's what we're going to go with. So next time, this is Jerry Diamond. If you're listening to this, you are the remnant.